Hello, and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten, and this is Leo Sun. How you doing, Leo?
I'm doing great, man. It's been an emotional week, but we made it.
Yes, it has. I was at Media Day earlier today, so that we'll talk about that a little bit. But first, a little bit more pressing news. On Friday, Karl-Anthony Towns, the Wolves' longest tenured player and big of the franchise for 9 seasons, was traded to the New York Knicks for Julius, Randle, Donte DiVincenzo, and a first-round pick via Detroit. It came as a bit of a surprise, to say the least, a huge surprise for all of us Wolves fans. Karl's been with the organization a long time. So I guess just off the top, Leo, we'll dive into the basketball of it all here soon, but just your thoughts on Karl-Anthony Towns no longer being on our favorite basketball team.
I'm hurt. To be completely honest, I'm hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sad. It's hard not to think about someone who has been here for so long, that has put up with so much, both on and off the court, basketball and not basketball related, going through all that. It's hard not to think back to, where were we individually when we saw him get drafted, that night with his mom and his dad next to him, and to think about how long that is. I mean, it's nearly a decade of time that's gone past, and we've seen so many great players come and go. A lot of not so great players come and go during that time as well too, but he's been there through it all. And I think emotionally for me, it hit extremely hard because, I thought about, if any of you had a chance to read, I did a letter, open letter to Karl-Anthony Towns on Canis Hoopus just almost a year ago, right after Media Day. And, for him, I really just want to share my sentiments about what I feel like he meant to me, what he meant to the Timberwolves fan base, and about what type of impact he had off the court. And so it feels sad that, after I got to do that, I got to meet him in person. His team reached out to me and wanted to, bring me in the tunnel. I met his dad. And I met Kat, and they shared about, how much he meant, for him to read that. And again, I didn't even think it would get to him. But anyways, all that to say is that I'm hurt, I'm sad, and still processing, to be honest.
Yeah, it hit all of us as a shock. The general idea that Karl-Anthony Towns would be traded has been bandied about for years, I think. Pretty much since they traded for Rudy, and maybe before that as well. And if it would have happened months ago, I don't think we would have been quite as surprised. Although them making the Western Conference Finals, I think a lot of us assumed that would, for at least a year, put off the Karl-Anthony Towns trade discussions. But as we'll discuss later, I think they got an offer that they felt like they had to take, one that the Knicks improved in recent days. It seems like adding DiVincenzo and possibly the first round pick from Detroit was what got it over the finish line. It was, I guess, previously just like a Towns for Randle straight up deal or lesser assets beyond that. But yeah, like you said, I think about where I was in my life when Karl-Anthony Towns first joined the Wolves. Honestly, for me, I've always been a Wolves fan since I was a kid, but honestly, the first time I really got into the team day to day was heading into college. Karl and I are the same age, so we started college the same year as each other. So my sophomore year of college, he was on the Wolves, and so pretty much my entire adult life, Karl has been on the Wolves, and for the first time in nearly a decade, today at Media Day, he was not there. So that's tough. It puts into perspective just like your entire life, an entire career, or about half of it now for Karl. My big thing is I was just so happy that they got success with him before they left. This
absolutely.
would feel so much more. They would sink so much more if they weren't able to beat Phoenix. If they had lost Game 7, which obviously they easily could have. But I think back to in the locker room after Game 7, just the pride he clearly had in what they were able to accomplish. Walking to the podium, those magical post-game pressers in Phoenix and Denver. We'll never forget Towns' his often mocked tone of voice when asked about just getting to the Western Conference Finals as their first playoff success, and just how much you want us to lose. That will ring in my head forever. as well as just the stuff in Phoenix where him and Ant were just giddy for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He left the Timberwolves on top, right? I mean, obviously they didn't win the NBA championship, but he left at pretty much as high of a point as you can. I think it's a little bit misleading when their talking heads talk about how, oh, he was so great in the Phoenix series, or he was even better in the Denver series, but he just absolutely stunk it up in the Western Conference Finals against the Mavs. Sure, he wasn't great for the first 3 games. I get it, and that was a big deal. So I'm not trying to excuse that, but he might have been the only reason we won 1 game. He had an incredibly hot game where he won game 4. And even in game 5, it was a bit of a blowout, obviously, but he had a great final game as well, too. Like, he was scoring. And I remember being in the arena. I have flown in just for one day. And for that 1 game, I didn't want to miss it. And I was sitting next to some fans. And this was when we were down maybe 20 plus points at that point. And Cat was still playing all out, attacking, drawing contact, hitting the floor. And I remember seeing some fans next to me. I was in the nosebleeds, and they said, "Man, this is what Cat always does. Though he always only tries when it's over. He doesn't ever do this." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, he tries too much for often at the time." And so, I'm really proud of the fact that he did get to enjoy that success, and he did get to see. Obviously, it wasn't that fairy tale ending, and I think the timing of it, as you mentioned, right? This is days, within 72 hours before media day. He had just flown in for 48 hours, went to a Lynx playoff game, did some appearances, was on the social media. And this is even for the timing of the week. This is a Friday at a 9 p.m., right before the weekend. Everyone's fans, players are all excited. We're about to hop into the weekend before media day. Finally, Timberwolves basketball is about to be back, and we just get kicked in the mouth with this.
Yeah. It's been tough. Anthony Edwards spoke at media day, just a little bit about what Cat meant to him and the reaction to the trade.
I think everybody know Cat, my brother. So that definitely hurt. But it's a business, so I just gotta roll with it. And I'm ready to get they're not here yet, so I'm ready to get to know them, and try to figure it out and get it figured out as fast as we can. Because trying to get back to where we was.
Yeah. So in the clip there, he's referencing DiVincenzo and Randle as the they. Ant later went on to kind of talk about his role being up to the number one, and he kind of pushed back against that, saying like it was never a number one, number two thing with me and Cat. It was always just trying to win. And that was the thing with Karl that was so impressive. That even when people thought that Cat would push against another player, kind of quote unquote taking his team, that never really happened. Karl was always willing to step aside in a sense, and do what was best for the team. And that really was his entire career. The thing that'll stand out to me is that Karl never requested a trade when he had plenty of reason to do so. NBA players have requested a trade for a lot less. And there was times, kind of post Jimmy, pre Ant, that Cat could have requested a trade. Maybe trading for D'Angelo Russell stave that off. I don't know. But Karl clearly loved this community. He clearly loved Minnesota. And it's a business. To quote Mad Men, that's what the money is for. It's not quite that black and white, but ultimately that's how the NBA works. You get the trade-off, unfortunately, is that you have to move cities occasionally. But I'm happy for Karl that he gets to play for another good team, and a very good Knicks team now, especially with him.
Right.
It'll be fun to kind of root on the Knicks here, at least for 80 of their 82 games.
Absolutely. Yeah, even with Ant's quote right there, you can hear he's the most unflappable guy, right? He never gets too down. The year the Wolves were his first year during pandemic year when we lost a bunch of games, I'd asked him in the post-game presser about, how's your spirit doing despite all this losing? It's your, standing wise, or the record's not, reflecting a really great product out there. How do you feel? And even as a rookie at, 19 years old there, 19, 20 years old, he was like, no, I'm good. I'm good every day. Like, nothing bothers me. I'm going to be happy every day. I've been through worse. But even in that quote, you can hear him. There's sadness in his voice. He's not just like, oh yeah, whatever, it's a business, I don't care. You can tell like it hurt him, and he meant it. You even heard it later on, when they were asking him about what is your role going to be now that Cat's not there and you're going to be the primary leader of the team. He's like, hey, I don't really want to talk about that yet right now either, because he just got traded. And so I think Anthony Edwards is really reflective even of this fan base that we're hurt and we don't know if we're quite ready to move on. You can hear with Ant, like maybe he's still processing it as well too. And so as much as he's hurting and he's healing from it as much as we are as a fan base and people who love Karl, his bounce back will ultimately have to impact the way we as fans also bounce back as well. If he's going to continue to move forward and build on this and build something even better than what we had before with Cat, we as fans will probably go with them. So I think however far he decides to go, even if I disagree with trading Cat was to increase our timeline, Ant's timeline to win, even though I disagree with that, if Ant rolls with it, then we got to roll with it as well, right?
Yeah, and he's a professional. He'll I think he can have two thoughts in his head and be disappointed that his best friend's no longer on the team, while also continuing forward with the Wolves organization. He did later in that interview throw his foot up on the desk to show off his
he did.
to show off his new shoes. So he also had some classic fun Ant moments as well. But yeah, just thinking back to some of to this last playoff run with Karl, where he was just, especially for the first two rounds, he was fantastic. And unfortunately, the Western Conference Finals didn't go well for him. Most of that was just cold shooting, but there was some other factors, matchup factors with defense and all that didn't play out. But I don't think us as a Wolves fans really appreciated that Karl-Anthony Towns guarded Kevin Durant and Nikola Jokic in back-to-back rounds.
Absolutely.
Held them as well as anyone can hold those guys defensively. And then in Game 7 was their leading scorer in what is now the greatest win in Wolves history, and has the last field goal in that game, the putback to really seal the win. And I just can't be happier that we at least we have that indelible moment. It's not, there's no more Cat isn't a winner, can't do this. It's like, I don't know, he guarded Kevin Durant and Nikola Jokic and did everything they asked of him, not just in that series, but really all season.
Yeah, as we move into this further discussion about Anthony Edwards, I do want to think that, he's still young and he's learning a lot. And I like to think that with every impressionable leader or veteran voice that he's had in the team, he's learned something. His rookie year, Ant had Ricky Rubio. They taught him about being ready, having to work, having to think the game, right? You can't just play, go out there, just jack up shots. You got to think the game, right? And then eventually he goes and he gets D'Angelo Russell, as well too on his team, right? D'Lo's there, he's there that first year too, but from D'Lo, I think he learns about, having that confidence, no matter how cold you are, having that confidence, having that swag, right?
Yep.
And then Patrick Beverley comes in. You feel like he learns about defense, about working hard in the weight room, bringing that intensity every day. And I would hope with Karl-Anthony Towns, and I have a strong feeling that he taught Anthony Edwards about what it means to be loyal, what it means to be a good teammate, and to stand up for his teammates. We think about the post-game pressers, all those interviews come so naturally from Ant. It's hard to envision that he didn't get influenced somewhat by Karl-Anthony Towns in his way to be, professional all the time, showing up, doing all the media, always being there, always talking up his teammates, never trying to make it about like, oh, well, as long as I get mine. It's always about what's best for the team. And yeah, so I really hope that carries down as we move forward.
Yeah, the best example of that from Cat was the fallout from the whole Jimmy Butler situation. I think as Wolves fans, we can finally kind of close the book on that whole thing, if you haven't done that years prior to now. But Cat never said a bad thing about Jimmy in public up until they face each other in games. He never blamed the organization. He was just the consummate professional and always took the high road, and that was impressive. And we'll see if Ant can take that. Jimmy and Cat got into it in that one game where Cat said, call Rachel Nichols. And Ant has plenty of on-court beefs with people. But I think, like you said, he can take that from Cat, the loyal and the professionalism that he showed.
Absolutely.
But to continue the Ant discussion, obviously last season was Ant's team, quote unquote. But now it is the whole organization now revolves around Anthony Edwards, if it didn't already before. I'll play a clip here. Tim Connolly kind of, the thing is about Media Day, Finch and Connolly were not able to discuss the trade because it is not official yet. They were not able to comment on it. But here's Tim Connolly answering a question about just building your own Ant for years to come, not just this next season.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that we have labor peace, but it's not great that you get a new CBA kind of mid-flow and you're trying to team build. So certainly the financials of any team are going to be paramount to how they build teams. But our goal is to be a championship level team. We think we're at that point. We certainly haven't done that, but we think we belong to be in the discussion. And we want to be a sustained team. We want to have different iterations around Anthony. He's so young, so we're going to see various teams built around him. And we're super excited about where we are now, and we're excited about where we're going to be in the future.
Yeah, so you hear Tim Connolly say that we're going to build multiple different iterations of this team around Ant. So last 2 seasons, it's been the Twin Towers, Rudy and Towns. And now they're going to build a new team around Gobert and Randle, and McDaniels and Naz Reid will step up into that. But Leo, what do you think about just this idea of ending the Cat era with the Wolves and really building this sustainable team that they can year in and year out potentially mix and match people around Ant, the pillar of the franchise?
I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting to have a leader, despite how I feel about the Cat deal, that is thinking about, he's being Doctor Strange here. He's thinking about how many different outcomes can he have with Anthony Edwards. It's not just about, I got to build this one perfect team. And once we get that, we got to win. And that's it. He's thinking about, okay, well, if this happens, and I got to have this, or if this happens, I have a contingency in that. And so it's exciting to have someone there that is thinking about it. And I think for me, I'm in the latter stages of my 30s now. And as you get older, sometimes you resist change. You get used to seeing the same things, and you appreciate stability a lot more than, when you're younger and seeing that change. But I think even with that, I'm able to comprehend and digest the fact, like, this has to, the Minnesota Timberwolves don't just fold once Karl-Anthony Towns retires. Like, it's going to continue to go. The team's not going to fold once Anthony Edwards retires. It's going to continue to grow. Now, is Tim Connolly going to live forever? No, is he going to be with the Timberwolves forever? Who knows after this year? We'll get to that later. But, with that said, I think it is smart to have that. And that is the type of leader that you need to continue to build, and not only think about the emotional side, and not only think about, well, what do the fans think, right? As much as we think that we're all, these, GMs at home, that we could do it better than he could. We did it in 2K. Why can't he do it in 2K? Where, do it in real life, where I really think that it is exciting. It is the right mindset to have.
Yeah, I think it makes sense in the broader picture like I kind of said off the top, it wasn't a surprise, the idea of trading Karl-Anthony Towns, especially when you look at the salary cap and the 2 aprons and the luxury tax, where this was something that was certainly on the table for a while. And now they have a lot more financial flexibility to go moving forward. So this year, they're going to run with this team which is largely the same last year, with DiVincenzo and Randle added. And I think eventually they'll get to a team where they don't have a rim protecting big sitting down there, and they play kind of closer to what Oklahoma City played last year with 5 out and Shea. And maybe there's a point Ant season where after Mike Conley has retired, that Anthony Edwards plays a bunch of point guard minutes. Or I think they just, as much as we are sad to see Karl go, and it's not that Karl's talent leaving allows them to play a different style, but it allows them to mix and match with. They just have far more trade possibilities. Maybe they look into trading Randle at some point. Obviously, probably wait on that till he plays at least a single game with our Wolves. But Nikhil might be an option so they have a lot of, and they got a pick that could convey here in a couple years. So yeah, they just have a lot more ways to go with it, where we thought coming into the offseason, it's like, well, what minimum guys can we get here? And it ended up being Joe Ingles, who we'll talk about his his media day experience here later. But yeah, I think as we move forward, let's try to wrap up on. Do you have any more parting thoughts on the Karl-Anthony Towns experience with the Wolves?
Well, I know we're only on audio. Eventually, we'll get to video, but I am rocking my Karl-Anthony Towns Prince City edition jersey right now as an ode to him. And don't need to go too much longer about Cap, but I do think that's something in terms of the future of the team is that we may or may not know what would have happened with another year of the Cat, Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards iteration of the team. I thought of it visually as we have a river, a large, strong river that was just going straight down. And we knew that had a lot of steam and a chance that was to take us to a championship. But we didn't know if it was going to get there. It could have just hit a halting screech. Now, what Tim Connolly did was that he threw a big boulder into that river and shattered it into where now you have 10 different smaller streams in the future. And we don't know where that's going to go. It may not lead to the championship, or it may, but we have different avenues of getting there now, whether it's this year, maybe it's one of the other streams in the future. So, it is tough to swallow, but I do understand it, take the emotions out of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into those potential rivers here. I think the biggest thing, I think we've kind of both shared that we aren't necessarily the biggest fans of this trade, while certainly understanding why it was made. But my first bullet point, just kind of let's talk through all the basketball aspects of this trade. And like you said, I do believe that this, in the short term, makes them a little bit worse for this upcoming season. If for nothing else, that just the chemistry is thrown into a loop a little bit here. I personally think that in the regular season they'll be just fine. They'll win. They'll win plenty of games. Their regular season win total to me doesn't change much. But I do see them as their championship ceiling is a little bit lower now. Tim Connolly kind of spoke about that at media day, and I don't. We'll listen to the clip and see if he agrees with me or if he has some different thoughts.
I think our room thinks we can win a championship, but it's not a zero-sum season. If we don't win a championship, it won't be an unsuccessful season. But we have to believe for it to become reality. We tasted postseason success last year. We haven't in a long, long time. I think we're really proud of the core we had, and we think we can play with anybody.
Yeah, so he's basically saying there, like, if we don't win a championship this year, that doesn't make it an unsuccessful season. I probably would have said the same thing about if they had not made this trade. But what do you think, Leo? Did this trade make the team worse in the short term? And if so, is it just a little bit, or do you feel we should be greatly changing what we think about this team?
I think of it as when we made that Rudy Gobert trade, we're like, all right, we need how many games? 30 games or so, right? We got to get through December before we decide, okay, is this going to work or not? And at that point, it looked like, no, I think we got our answer. This isn't going to work, and everyone's like, oh, this is terrible, burn the team, whatever. And that's why my first gut reaction was like, well, we'll know if this team's going to be any good. We'll see if that chemistry is really effective, losing a slow-mo, but then losing a Cap and then adding a couple new guys. Like, we'll see by, January 2025 whether or not this team will gel. But the truth of the matter is that we're not going to know at that point. So do I feel like it makes us worse in the media? Yeah, absolutely. Guys got to learn new roles. They talked about it in media day today as well, too, that there's going to be some adjustments. Their defense is going to be played maybe a couple different roles. Rotations might be a little bit different. So what's that outcome going to be? Could be good, could be bad, but I have a hard time believing it'll be as easy as it was last season, rattling off regular season wins like nothing's changed, right? And plus, you think about the players involved in this. I think about, is Naz Reid really ready to step up to that role? Are we really truly going to be bringing Julius Randle, an all-NBA, multi-time all-star, off the bench? I feel like that's what I've been seeing a lot of the discourse. I was like, oh, we'll bring Julius off the bench and he'll kill the second unit. It's like, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Naz Reid just won Sixth Man of the Year. He didn't win MVP of the NBA. He's still going to take some time to adjust. And so, who knows? Yeah, maybe he will start some games. Maybe, who knows what's going to happen with the rotations. But that said, if he's ready to step up into the role to continue to contribute more, he's not going to get less minutes this year. That's for sure. And if Julius Randle is healthy, I put it out there on Twitter that I felt like a reasonable, positive, optimistic, real type of development for Julius Randle coming in is, what if he takes a Zach Randle type of career arc? Zach Randolph spent his first 9 seasons just kind of not playing a meaningful NBA game, really. Padded the stats, bully people under the paint. Had this just, I'm gonna play through you. I'm gonna score and ones. I can stretch the floor a little bit. I might get into a couple flagrant fouls. I might flip Blake Griffin over. That's kind of Julius Randle. And then once he got to Memphis, he became a part of something bigger where he didn't change his game completely, but he learned how to contribute to winning basketball and buy into something better. And I have a hard time believing that Julius Randle can't do that at that age. I mean, Julius Randle's still only 29, I believe, right? He's, if not almost 30, like he's still not an old player. He could still evolve. He has a long way to go. So if he can buy into that new role, buy into what the Wolves did defensively last year, then absolutely I could see them being better. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the media for this season. Is that I think it can be, but we might not know until late in the season, I would say, barring health.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas, I don't know how, you shouldn't take too much from Vegas Sporting's lines, but their title odds went from 11-1 to 10-1. You can make the case that's just because they're getting talked about more, and that generally raises a line there. But the Vegas bettors seem to like the trade, or at least view it as a smart move. To your Randle point, I have a really hard time thinking that they're going to have Julius Randle come off the bench, and I think people are being a bit naive or a bit underselling how good Julius Randle is when they think Naz Reid is going to start. Naz Reid will start plenty of games. Rudy will miss an odd game. Randle will miss a game. He might not even be ready for the start of the season. Would have been a question to ask if this trade had been finalized today. But Julius Randle's a 2-time All-NBA player. He's going to start. I don't know that for sure, but he's going to start. Could they? I mean, Towns sat at the end of games sometimes, so there was fouls or just matchups. They could try that with Randle and play Naz. Chris Finch talked about playing Naz at the 3. I don't think that much changes with the swap of Randle for Cat, so they could, he said not in a starting role, but there could be rotations where they have the 3 bigs out there. But Randle's going to start, and I think people are being a little bit underselling Randle. The biggest thing, and it's fair criticism, that he has been bad in the playoffs. But my point with that is people are bad in the playoffs until they're not. Playoffs are so matchup dependent. And
I could
really
think of one player. I could think of one player that had a reputation as a bad postseason player and just had his best playoff season.
That's right. So Karl-Anthony Towns, I'm going to assume, is the person you're referencing there.
Bingo.
Karl-Anthony Towns is known as a terrible postseason player. And the first season that he wasn't the number one offensive option, he had a great postseason. And maybe the haters want to point out the Dallas series. They don't get to the Dallas series without Karl. We talked about that. But I think, there's certainly matchups that Randle will not succeed in, and it's certainly it's fair criticism of his career up to this point. But also in the Knicks teams he went to the playoffs with, he was like the number one option on a Tibbs offense that wasn't greatly designed in general. And
absolutely
was putting him in not great spots. So I would love to see, if they do put him in good offensive spots, if they can get more out of him. And I'll guess that they will. But personally, I just think that in general, the Wolves traded away the best player in this trade. And so to me, they get downgraded just a bit. But I still think the greater goals are still there for this team. They could win a championship if X, Y, and Z go right. But maybe their margin of error now is just a little bit slimmer. I'll play here what Mike Conley had to say about Julius Randle.
Yeah, it'll be different for sure because Cat can do so much, and some of his best strengths are in the paint. A lot of times, like stuff he can do with the ball finishing and all that. But now with Julius, he's a guy I think that really utilizes his ability to get up and down. He can space the floor, but also be a playmaker. He's a secondary playmaker that can bring the ball up the court faster than some point guards, be as physical as anybody in the league, and get to the free throw line, create mismatches, and all that. Really is going to be how we're trying to use him and implement him into what we do as far as our spacing and stuff like that.
All right, so Leo, what do you think about Mike's response about the switch between Randle and Cat, and just Randle's a playoff player, or as Mike said in there, potentially using Randle on the break a little bit more than Cat did.
Yeah, I don't know outside of Rudy Gobert how many more players we were a little bit more fearful seeing with the ball in his hands running down 100 miles an hour on the fast break by himself outside of Cat, right? You know, I thought of it as Cat with the ball. I never checked this, but I would assume like in 2K, his passing vision is like a pretty high number. Let's say like 80. His vision's an 80, but his passing accuracy was maybe like 55 or 60. Like he saw it, but he would just swing. He would just overcook those passes sometimes, right? But it was ambitious. He saw what he wanted to do. And with Julius Randle, it's almost the opposite. He's not seeing 2-3 plays ahead, maybe, but he's making those accurate reads to hit the corners, right? To make the right decision, on the break. And so, that is the kind of trade-off that you get where it's like, I have a lot more trust in him coming down and not ending up in an offensive foul or the ball ending up in the 10th row or something crazy like that. So I do see the vision, and I am excited to see how that plays out. Now, is he going to be bringing the ball up the court in the fourth quarter? I should hope not. That's going on, and something wrong has probably happened in that game. But I am intrigued by that possibility of it. I do think it may unlock newer versions of the Wolves that we didn't 100% get to see in action in terms of in transition.
Yeah, for sure. I think having him push the ball is probably something that they'll do a little bit more. That's something all teams. The Wolves are incredibly slow last year. They played with they had some of the fewest fast score possessions in the league, and I think that's just something that they'll try to get easy offense of next year. Yeah, we'll move on to the next player that was involved in the trade, Donte DiVincenzo. Mike also spoke about him and his shooting ability.
What Donte will bring is something I think we've desperately wanted to add. Spacing has been different than Cat spacing, being a big as opposed to somebody who's moving around, somebody who can shoot off of screens, behind screens, corner spacing, transition, like a lot of stuff that Cat does, but in a guard form. And I just love his attitude, his the way that he plays the game, very selfless, and it's all about winning. He's a champion. He knows what it takes. And I think that he's one of those guys like Drew Holiday that you need guys like those individuals to win at a high level. And we're very excited to have him and Julius on the team.
All right, Leo. So what do you think about just the Donte DiVincenzo addition to the trade, potentially the one that pushed this trade over the line, and just the idea of his shooting being able to replace Cat shooting on a team that doesn't always have the most amount of shooting on it as it stands?
So the streets is saying that this isn't a Cat Julius Randle trade. This is a Cat Donte DiVincenzo trade.
Mm-hmm.
That he is actually that star piece. Now, we're not saying that Donte DiVincenzo in a vacuum is better than Julius Randle. I think there's a tweet that I have way back in the day that I felt like if there is a one-on-one competition of every single player in the NBA, Julius Randle will make it to probably like the semifinals. So in a vacuum, so I'm not saying he's a better player, but given the contract and given the team needs and the fit, that Donte DiVincenzo is clearly a better fit for what we're trying to do here with the Timberwolves. So, I'm excited by that. I'm not Donte DiVincenzo's biggest fan, but I have accepted the fact that he has had a ton of success on almost every team he's played on. With those Bucks teams, he didn't end up winning a championship with that iteration of the Bucks, but he was an integral part. Giannis spoke so highly of Donte DiVincenzo and how they had a great two-man chemistry playing together, that he really knew how to read the floor, where to be, and that was like one of his perfect running mates. And lo and behold, he ends up on the Warriors a year or two later. He wins a championship, playing a crucial role for them. He's been basically a light version, and I mean that in terms of basketball quality, not skin color, version of Steph Curry last year post All-Star break. I mean, that man was on fire. I had him in like all three of my fantasy leagues. Dude was just dropping 20-point games, drilling 3 after 3. It was amazing. And so, I do have a worry with Donte, though, is that the rumor has it from the New York side, I don't know how much of this is maybe damage control, was that as much as he was excited for the Nova Knicks, that he was concerned about what his role was going to be moving forward, that he wasn't going to get as much minutes, he was going to get the squeeze because the Knicks acquired Mikal Bridges in the offseason, which is fair given what he was doing last season for the Knicks. But I do fear that, well, is he going to play many more minutes for the Timberwolves this year than he did for the Knicks last year? I do think he will have a great role on the team, but I don't know if he's going to be playing 30 plus minutes a night. Should he be? Maybe, time will tell. And that's where you got to trust Chris Finch to know, all right, this is what I need. Maybe Donte DiVincenzo will be this year's Kyle Anderson for Chris Finch. Who knows? But I'm excited.
Yeah, I think there might be some possible minutes on nights that Mike Conley sits. Mike said today that he doesn't expect to play as many games as he did this previous season. Maybe they you run a point ant with DiVincenzo as the other guard there. But yeah, there's not going to be 30 minutes a night for him. But he's also, I just think, he's a championship caliber player that really every team either wants or needs.
Absolutely.
And something the Wolves haven't had basically since Malik Beasley left in the Gobert trade is that just this flamethrower shooter that is there's going to be nights where DiVincenzo hits 5 threes in a quarter and there's just like target center is pumping. I'm excited for that. I thinking about like kind of the reports that this is DiVincenzo kind of threw it over the line here, and that makes total sense because a Cat for Randle trade would, without DiVincenzo involved, would have made the Wolves significantly worse. And
it would have made my mental health worse, I'd say as well.
So now they have DiVincenzo, just another quality rotation wing player. They have a ton of them. They have basically Mike Conley's a point guard. As far as their set rotation, Mike Conley's the point guard. They have their 3 bigs, Randle, Gobert, and Nas, and everyone else is kind of this switchable wing that they can guard 1 through 4, maybe even some of the bigger Jaden could guard a small 5. Like you have a lot of these long, huge wings that are all perfect for the postseason. My question, I guess, would be where Nickeil Alexander-Walker fits in with all of this. Maybe just more wings is always better. He certainly will be in the rotation, but just long term, maybe this is something they look to, trade him, or I don't know. That would be the one person that I would honestly, you talk about DiVincenzo's minutes, the Nickeil minutes are kind of where I would be a little bit concerned there.
It's a battle of the 3 acronym name players, right? You have NA, you have DDV, and in essence, DDV is kind of an actualized version of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, right? Someone that could really shoot that 3, someone that could really get after it on defense. They do kind of play the same role now. Again, embarrassment of riches, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Injuries do happen, as we know. So, I do think that there still will be opportunities for him to play. Nickeil has earned the trust of Coach Chris Finch, so I don't think he'll just get DMPs now all of a sudden. But yeah, it's a chance you want iron to sharpen iron, right? And so if that's the case, you want the best players possible on your team to compete for those minutes, and then let it lay as you will.
Yep, exactly. So we'll move on to really the biggest part that played the biggest role in this trade is the Wolves' financial flexibility. The Wolves were staring down a $100 million tax bill in an arena that generally doesn't support $100 million tax bills. They were planning to lose money on a cash basis. Obviously, they make plenty on the investment itself, so we'll leave that be. But for this season, they do save a little bit of money, about $20 million. That helps them. But really, it's about the future, where now they have a bunch of people coming off the books next season. Naz Reid has a player option. He will almost certainly decline. Will become a free agent. Rudy Gobert has a player option that the Wolves can either decide to. They cannot extend Naz Reid off the player option, so they'll have to compete to sign him as like everyone else. Rudy Gobert, they can cancel out the option and re-sign him there. And now they have Randle, who also has a player option, which I believe they can re-sign as well. I don't know what they plan to do with one or all 3 of those guys. But now they have the room. They could sign 1, 2, 3 of those or Nikhil, and stay under the second apron, which is important for saving cash money, but also their pick in 2033 is now, if they can get under the second apron, which they almost certainly will not be frozen. They can trade that when it becomes available. But honestly, as I say all this, and it is important, they gain a lot of, like we said, they could trade now. They have a lot of trades they can make next season, the deadline. I just kind of, as a sports fan, be like, we had a championship caliber team, and we're worried about aprons, and we're worried about, and so that's a bit of a bummer that that the money got a hold of it. But honestly, we don't know. Maybe they honestly could have determined, hey, we didn't think we were good enough. We thought the Western Conference Finals was kind of our peak. And they might have just not as been as high on Karl-Anthony Towns as me or you or other Wolves fans that are sad to see him go.
Yeah, I hope the nerds are happy with the ones who love the cap magic and all that type of minutia. You got your wish, right? We finally have, again, this isn't a guaranteed we're going to be pursuing a max free agent in the offseason by any means, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, we do have that flexibility finally where we can hopefully stop that discussion of like, oh, what if we extend Julius Randle for another $40 million a year for the next 4 years? Like, that's probably not going to happen. I know there was some chatter on the internets about, there were other teams that were interested in Julius Randle. I think it was like Atlanta, I think Charlotte. And I got scared. I looked it up and I was like, all right, I doubt Tim Connelly isn't the type of guy who's just going to make trades just to make trades. But I did look up, all right, well, who say on the Charlotte Hornets, if they were interested in Julius Randle, do they have that makes around that same amount of money? And there's one player that makes almost the same amount of money as Julius Randle, and that's Miles Bridges. And that happens, I might need to get a lobotomy at that point. So, again, I doubt that's going to happen. I was doomsdaying the situation here, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, there is a lot of flexibility. There are a lot more tradable assets now. You talked about the draft picks. That's something that Tim Connelly is excellent at, is doing magic during the draft, whether it's trading picks or whether it's selecting the best players available, Wendell Moore Jr. excluding. But yeah, it is something that had to be addressed, and now we no longer have to spend all season wondering about every time Cat has a bad game. We're like, oh well, second apron hell.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, especially with the financial, it lowers the risk of just being trapped by 10,000 degrees. Like, if Cat had a bad season, or God forbid another injury season, this deal likely wouldn't be on the table. I think even if he had a good season, this deal may not have been on the table a year from now. If it theoretically was, then that's the risk you take, because that was my preferred option, was to run it back with Cat, and then if you need to trade him, then you can. But I think sitting with it longer, I'm not sure they would have gotten the same deal. They probably could have found someone to take Towns, and you get back an expiring contract. But I don't think they were going to get back an expiring contract that's going to give you hopefully 90%, 80% of what Towns gives you, along with DiVincenzo and a pick.
On the emotional side of it, I know we already kind of covered this, Ryan, but I did think about this in the calculus of trying to figure out my emotions. Was, Cat got traded to New York, right? And that's where I think his dad had, a brief cup of tea, whether it was a training camp deal or something. He's from Jersey. He's from the area. I know that's not New York, but whatever the case is, he at least went to a place that's like, all right, the Sun our conference. It's a rather neutral team other than the Tibbs being there. But he very easily could have ended up, say we didn't trade him then, you wait till the deadline, he could have been traded to someone like the Warriors or someone like Phoenix, or someone that we have more beef with, someone that I would hate watching him play for. That's like, oh my God, please no, do not go there, right? So there's that.
Yeah, and I think there was discussions with the Jazz centering around Markkanen, and probably Clarkson also comes back in that deal, or that's what Utah did not want to include, was Clarkson. I'm glad he's with the Knicks. I'm not sure the Jazz really were all that interested in Towns. They're probably just better off with Markkanen. But yeah, I'm glad that Towns landed on his feet with a good team, and they'll be fun to watch. But yeah, I think we're both kind of in lockstep here that what isn't necessarily a trade we'd want to do. Honestly, in a vacuum, it's a good trade. They got value. Towns on his
Right.
contract, just from a pure money standpoint, it lowers his value. They got in a vacuum, they got a great deal. I just think the risk, and there's risks with any trades. The risk is that you potentially broke about a team that did have a chance to win a championship, but as Tim Connolly has said, they feel this team also has a chance to win the championship.
Yeah, Ryan, let me ask you, do you feel that you have to put more trust, blind trust, let's say, in Tim Connolly if after he made that Rudy Gobert trade and he leveraged, all of our picks or whatever the case is, did you have to blindly trust in him then more than right now when he's training Cat away right after a Western Conference Finals appearance that you have to blindly trust that? Like, which one do you feel like was harder for you to kind of close your eyes and like just believe him at the wheel?
The one was harder for me to believe was Gobert, just because it was basically the first move with Conley on the job, and I was wrong. I personally did not see the fit with him and Cat.
Sure.
And I think a lot of us were supremely wrong, obviously, because it fit extremely well. And I think, like you said, you kind of got to have a little bit of that. Well, he's done it before; he'll do it again. Not that trades with good process behind them can't end up being bad. But I think he's shown that he can put a good team together, and now he has the flexibility to continue to kind of build on this.
Right. It's a little bit different, and I agree with you. I think it's a little bit different when you have someone like Tim Connolly with the resume that he has, not even pre-Timberwolves, so even during his years with the Timberwolves right now, you even look at the D'Lo trade, right, or whatever the case is, rather than you have someone like Kevin McHale making trades and trading Kevin Garnett for this poo-poo platter, or David Kahn, drafting 2-point guards back to back. Like, there's a little bit more of a resume. I think we should give that a little bit more respect. I think that's what makes it a little bit more palatable, where it's like, yes, I'm not happy about it. Yes, I'm hurt by it. Yes, I understand why you made it. But if you really think about who's driving this train, who's driving this plane, it makes it a little bit more easy for me to understand.
Yep, I agree. Exactly. Well, I think that'll wrap up our Karl-Anthony Towns in the trade discussion. There'll be plenty of retrospectives to do. Randle's first game, trade deadline, all that stuff. We'll be able to kind of come back and see how things are going with it. But I think for now, we'll kind of hop back on our regularly scheduled looking ahead to the season train. We'll miss Cat, but it's still in a fantastic Wolves team and a fantastic Wolves season that we're looking forward to. But like I said, I was out on media day, and my favorite person that we got to talk to was Joe Ingles. He was very funny, whether joking about how this was the only time we were going to talk to him, which is obviously untrue, to on the way out of the media room joking that was his final unpaid appearance, that if we wanted him, there needed to be financials involved. Obviously, he's kidding. But yeah, he told, kind of building on what we talked about last week with Rudy and the Shaq stuff of it all and the worst player ever. Joe Ingles obviously played with Rudy for many, many years in Utah, and he kind of talked about his experience with Rudy Gobert, the teammate and really the person.
The one thing to me that I'll always remember and never forget, and he'll always be a good friend for, was when he, everyone knows he's into his weird little crystals and whatever. And when my son was diagnosed with autism, he was a couple of days later was at a store buying more crystals and doing what he does, and there was this one massive thing that had some type of writing about autism and the connection or whatever it was, and he bought it and gave it to us as a gift. And at that time, it was pretty rough. And then also, we got twins, Jacob's a twin. He also bought another one for his sister because he didn't want to give one to Jacob and not to Billa. So, like, the care and the thought, like, he's a caring guy. He wants to win. He's a professional. To me, like, those things are more important than what people want to say on the outside.
Yeah, so cool story there. Rudy clearly builds a connection with his teammates, and that's just another example of Rudy Gobert, the basketball player, when you're interacting with him or even just the person, is so starkly different than the person that gets portrayed some of these talk shows.
I think there's going to be a need for Rudy Gobert to step up in the locker room. I'm not saying that he hasn't before, but we've had, our Kyle Andersons, Ant obviously does what he does. Patrick Beverley was big there. I think this year, Mike Conley there. That's great and all, like having those vets there. But I think Cat was also a huge locker room thing. I'm not trying to take it back to him, but I think Rudy Gobert will need to continue to fill that role to have these great connections. Like Joe Ingles has these stories that he had with Rudy from back in their Utah days. I hope Rudy's continuing to build stories with the players on the team right now. I think about when I covered the Sacramento Kings Timberwolves game. This was the first Rudy year there. And so things were still a little bit wonky. D'Lo had just gotten traded, so Mike Conley had just come in. But I remember I was in the locker room and we were waiting for media, and we were waiting extra long, and everyone was kind of getting a little bit antsy. It was the end of a long road trip, so there wasn't a lot of media. And me being on the West Coast, I just happened to be there for that game.
Sure.
And so when I was there by myself, I was waiting, and it was my first time covering a game in person. And they were all huddled around Rudy Gobert, who had his phone out. And there was a big UFC fight at the time. It was between John Jones and Cyril Gane, who's this French, basically kickboxer. And it was a huge title fight. And everyone was huddled around Rudy. And they were all joking at him about Rudy, if he loses, I'm sure they had money going on the thing. But they were all just wrapped around him. And within the first, I think, couple minutes, the French fighter got choked out. And everyone was just laughing. They were having a great time. They were making fun of Rudy. They were like, no, we ain't ever going to keep Rudy around if we get in a fight. He's not going to be able to protect us. And, they were poking fun at him, but he laughed along with it. He didn't take it personally. He didn't get angry. And, you love to see that. And I'd like to see that continue as he continues now without Cat. He is alone, a big, true big on the team now. And so I think that presence will be needed in the locker room.
Yeah, I think your point about leadership is important now that Cat is gone. Rudy will fill some of that, and I think Joe Ingles will fill some of that. His playful spirit. The quote that kind of went a little viral after was he's going to try to get Mike Conley his first technical of his career. He's going to talk to all the refs and make sure that happened. I know it seemed like I thought a couple games there Mike was close. Mike doesn't seem like the type of guy to be talking about the officials much, but it seems like there were some calls that went against the Wolves last season that Mike was close. So we'll see if Joe Ingles can get Mike Conley his first technical of his career.
I gotta say, during media day, I was able to tune in just for bits and pieces while I was at my day job, and I did tune in. I did hear the end of Mike Conley's presser, and that led right to Joe Ingles' presser. And right as Joe Ingles was coming in, Mike Conley was kind of riffing a little bit about what Joe Ingles is, how old he is or whatever. And the first thing I hear when Joe Ingles steps on right in front of the mic before they really start recording, he says, "Man, screw Mike. I don't care what he said." And it's just kind of funny. I mean, have you all ever, I'm sure everyone here has been at some point an argument with a spouse, a sibling, a parent, and you guys are mad, you guys are sad, you guys are angry, whatever the case is. And, right now after the Cat trade, everyone's a little bit on edge. I know for me as a fan, I was a little bit on edge. And it's like when someone comes in, you have that third person comes in that just rips a huge fart or just makes this really funny joke or something. Everyone starts laughing and you kind of forget for a second there that, oh yeah, we were mad, huh? We were just upset about the steal. And so Joe Ingles is bringing that, and I'm so here for it. I mean, yeah, he's representing as a older Timberwolves fan, I'd say now, compared to a lot of the newer Anthony Edwards fans. I can appreciate him being old. I can appreciate the fact that he played with Ricky Rubio when they were in Spain and in Utah, that he's best friends with them. So if Ricky vouches for him, then I'm all on board. So I don't know how much Joe Ingles is going to play, but I do feel like that locker room presence is going to be huge from him.
Yeah. The thing that stood out to me is that he talked about in his presser that a year ago that the Wolves had talked to Joe about potentially signing with them, and he ended up in Orlando. And his son on the spectrum that he talked about in the Gobert story, his son loved his school so much that their family stayed in Orlando, and so he moved to Minnesota by himself. And he talked about him and his wife discussed that, and it's a sacrifice. I know from me and my family that would be very, very difficult.
Sure.
And I think that just shows that he has to, on some level, believe that this is a special team and a special opportunity for him. If he just wanted a paycheck, he would have stayed in Orlando if that was an option for him, or found a simpler opportunity for him. But I think he's going to play similar to Kyle Anderson a little bit, a bigger role than either we expect or maybe want. Finch is going to trust him, especially early on, I think. But I'm excited to see what he can do. He's another, along with DiVincenzo now, the two of the better shooters on the team. They usually only have one, I guess one plus Cat. And now they have a couple guys. So we'll see if Randle will start, obviously, we talked about that, but their bench unit, they'll probably roll. I mean, they can roll out a bench unit of, if Randle with the bench unit, Randle, DiVincenzo, and Ingles, and really go shooting heavy, and maybe Rob Dillingham with that group as well, and just go offense. So,
sure.
Yeah, it should be a fun season. Do you have any other parting thoughts on the Cat trade, or really anything else before we wrap up here?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we really got to see Joe Ingles' personality up close and personal for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've heard great things about him and everything. We got to see it. And I would like to let Wolves fans who are similar to me, who are still heard about the Cat thing, that still wake up in the morning thinking that, all right, this is all a bad dream, that we haven't gotten a chance to really get to know Julius Randle. We didn't get a chance to really get to know Donte DiVincenzo yet, right? And so once we really do get to know them, once they come in for the introductory press conference, I assume at some point this week, most likely, as camp is starting, yeah, we'll feel a little bit better about it. Because right now, all we know is, Julius Randle was, he's kind of a ball hog. The New York fan base didn't really get along with him, and he didn't really get along with them. We don't really know much about Donte DiVincenzo. So, there's a lot of things that we don't know. So right now is probably the worst that we'll feel about it. Fingers crossed, right? So I am excited to kind of see what's going to happen. And I still am excited for Timberwolves basketball, right? We've been hurt by way more. We're Timberwolves fans. We've gone through so much worse before that at this point, this is like us coming off a Western Conference Finals and thinking like, man, this is hard. It's like, no, this has been way worse than this before. So again, good things ahead. The two words that I will end with is Cat forever.
Yep. My two words will be Wolves back, because they are indeed back. Their first preseason game is this Friday.
Let's go.
So they are back in action out in Staples Center against the Los Angeles Lakers. Well, they'll begin the regular season as well. So we'll be back next week sometime. That'll be a topic for us to discuss how that game goes. We'll get back to our regular kind of format here with our fun topics and our fun the way we do things. But for today, we kind of had to throw that out the window a bit and really dive into really a momentous trade that will shape the next few years of the Timberwolves organization. We hope for better, but you never know. So yeah, that's where we're going to wrap up. Thanks for hanging out, Leo. We'll see you guys sometime next week.
Love you guys. Drive safe.